I'm no good at taking good advice, and I'm self-careless, so don't tell me twice that lately I've been so stuck in my head that I forget just about everything my therapist said. Maybe I'm self-helpless.
Hey everyone, welcome to Self-Helpless. I'm Delanie Fischer, and today I'm chatting with Kit Williamson, who is an actor and filmmaker best known for his role on Mad Men and for creating the series on Netflix Eastsiders and his new series Unconventional, now on Reverie. And we're talking about the highs and lows of being in a creative field, the uncertainty, the things that hold it together and make it sustainable, including grieving losses of projects that don't come to fruition, taking control of your career and making your own things, entrepreneurship, alternative streams of revenue, and thinking and living outside the box. Kit also gives great tips for independent filmmakers and shares how his work and activism are intertwined. A big theme is creativity as a lifeblood, which many of us can relate to. You know, if we're not creating something at work or in a professional setting, chances are we're creating something at home in some way with a DIY project or a new hobby or whatever it might be. So even if you're not a filmmaker, all creatives can relate to what Kit shares. And even if you're not in a field that's considered creative, if you want to go against the grain in some way in your life, but you are feeling nervous to take the first step, there is a lot in this episode for you too. All right, here is my conversation with Kit Williamson. How did you first get involved in acting and filmmaking?
It started for me in Mississippi when I was around 8 years old, doing summer classes at the local repertory theater, the one local repertory theater, new stage. It was a great experience for me, and it led me to sort of do school plays and then apply for an arts boarding school in Michigan when I was 16 as sort of a press button, eject from car with parachute plan to get out of the state.
And some actors make their own things and some don't, right? Like what was the turning point for you for creating your own projects and then specifically your own series?
So at boarding school, I started out as an acting major and then I
Okay.
finished as a writing major my senior year because I
Oh.
fell in love with playwriting classes. But
Oh,
for the longest
gotcha.
time, all through college, really, I kept the two things separate. For some reason, I compartmentalized them. Even until I was in grad school at UCLA. I went to undergrad at Fordham for acting and double majored in playwriting and got very fortunate to be able to do a Broadway show my junior year and then
Wow.
unfortunately found out that doing an off-Broadway show pays $200 less per week than your unemployment, so I moved to Los Angeles in time for the previous writer's strike and went back to grad school for playwriting. And while I was there, I finally decided, I don't know what mental block I had about combining those skill sets, but I finally said, I'm going to write something for myself to act in and I'm going to direct it. And my second year at UCLA, I created a web series called Eastsiders, which me and a bunch of friends and my husband shot together in our living rooms for $2,000 and a stick of gum to hold the whole thing together. We're able to
Amazing.
sell to logo and then Netflix in the second season.
Oh my gosh, so incredible. I know some people talk about, creating something out of necessity or they just enjoy the creative agency that they have around the whole project. What did you learn from making Eastsiders that you were then able to apply to the making of Unconventional, which we'll get into more details about?
I think that the lessons that I really learned in Eastsiders that I was able to bring to Unconventional are one, work with available resources, write to what you know you can shoot. That's something that I've always really admired about filmmakers like the Duplass brothers, where they just kind of look around and say, hey, anybody got a cool house? Let's set a movie there. Oh, hey, I know this incredible actor. Let's make this actor the center of this. And
Yeah.
so, thinking also of people as your most valuable resource, as your most important resource, and knowing how to build a team. I'm very, very grateful to be working with my director of photography, Rob Edgecombe from Eastsiders, and my executive producer and head of post production and main editor, Larissa James, also worked with me on 3 seasons of Eastsiders and then came on board to Unconventional, as well as my friend Bria Grant, who was our first guest director on season 4 of Eastsiders and wrote and directed an episode of Unconventional. So
That's
just finding those
awesome.
people that you like really trust and connect with, and knowing that that exchange, that creative exchange is really the point to me.
Have you ever had a really big vision about something and then you've had to scale it back based on resources or logistics? Or do you always start from that place of what do I have? What's within my network? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it depends on what your end game is, right? If you're trying to
Yeah.
produce it yourself, I would really recommend that people think about it, think about the end of the journey at the beginning, rather than try to kind of solve an unsolvable puzzle, or write something that you're not going to be able to execute. But the flip side of that is I've been very fortunate to get to do a lot of TV and film development, where I'm writing scripts for studios and networks. And in that case, you should dream as big as what you think the budget might be, could be,
Yes.
because what you're really looking to do in those scripts is inspire people to put money down on it. Unfortunately, most of the scripts that are commissioned, they don't put money down on it, and then you feel like you've just thrown a year of your life into the mouth of the beast.
Sure.
But still helpful, I think, to dream really big whenever you're writing something that you intend to sell externally, or that you're writing as a work for hire.
Such great advice of like, look at the situation and it doesn't have to be all or nothing, or you might be doing a combination of projects. I listened to an interview of yours and you shared about growing up gay in Mississippi. And there was a moment that you had as a kid where you sat in your room and you made a list of all the things that you couldn't be. Can you share more about that specific time in your life and even that moment?
Yeah, puberty was rough. Coming with your body changing and your hormones going insane, to then have this added layer of shame and self-rejection, uh,
Right.
that was founded in reality, by the way. There were a lot of people that were in my life that would not have ever accepted me. Thankfully, my family was an exemption to that, that I discovered as time went on. But, you're 10, you don't know that. And one little comment, one little moment sticks with you and really imprints itself upon you as a core memory of why you're never going to be happy. But I'm very happy to say that, though I think it is still true, a lot of the jobs that I was scratching off the list, like being a priest or being the president, that some of those doors still are closed. And to be honest, I was not really a candidate for either of those things to begin with. You do want little kids to think maybe you could be president someday, but let's be honest, most of us shouldn't be.
What else was on that list of yours when you were a kid that was actually complete bullshit that maybe you have become today?
Actor, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Do feel like I lost out on a lot of professional opportunities by coming out so publicly, not just as an individual, but as an activist, somebody who's really putting my life out there and branding myself as a queer filmmaker, dating back to 2012 when the GLAAD media report was abysmal. And we've seen all of these strides, but we've also seen 4 years of decline in representation on television. And that's to say nothing of whether or not that
Wow.
has been substantive. But on the flip side, you have Jonathan Bailey set to become our first openly gay movie star who's been out for the entirety of his career. We have a lot of people who, in hindsight, we've had a lot of gay movie stars, but at the time, in order to rise through the ranks of the industry, that's something that they couldn't really talk about publicly.
Wow, I did not realize the decline in representation. I think, you just kind of assume it continues to build.
And I hope it does. I hope that the art
Yeah,
industry bends towards equality. But we also know it's not a straight line.
absolutely. And I think I heard you mention on an interview that you were outed when you were younger, and I'm curious to know how that moment felt for you and if you had ever thought about how you would share that information if it had been up to you at that time.
Yeah, I'd obviously been sort of like planning an exit strategy, just because whether my family was accepting or not, I felt that my surroundings were not conducive to me living the kind of life that I wanted to live. Even with, scratching off all of those possible occupations on the list, I still held out hope that I could find happiness. And specifically that I could find a partner to share this world with, which I'm so grateful to have found. I'm celebrating 18 years. I just celebrated 18 years of with my husband. We've been
Yeah.
married for 9, together for 18.
Awesome.
And that seemed unfathomable, but also seemed like something that was worth risking everything for. And it turns out I was right. Like a little 10-year-old Kit was right. Um, Being gay is definitely the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it's something my husband and I say to each other a lot. We're so grateful for for this to be our lot in life. But that didn't seem like it was going to be the case when I was 15 years old. And I'd already applied to art school, and then having my journal read and having people kind of become aware of not just the gayness, but also the kind of like darkest, most hurt and scared parts of me. I understand why that was very jarring for my parents, because I was presenting a pretty fucking good front that everything was fine.
Have there been moments with, or throughout your relationship with your husband, John, has it been hard to let yourself be happy?
Absolutely, it still is. It's part personality type, part lived experience, and part brain chemistry. But I don't always experience joy at logical times. Like
Mm.
my logical brain will be like, "Hey, you've just accomplished this thing that you're so proud of," and then that sort of inner saboteur, to quote RuPaul, will then kind of get really really loud and start talking about like all the hardships that you had to face in order to get there, and how inconsequential it is because you need to be focusing on the next step and the next step and the next step. So it's
Mm.
something that I've had to like do a lot of personal work on, and still have a lot of work left to do to, own my accomplishments, sit in moments of joy and gratitude, and appreciate the amazing things in my life.
I've talked with a lot of artists about what drives us. And when you start developing the awareness of when you're doing something because you truly enjoy it versus maybe when you're doing something just for the outcome or external validation, or sometimes those mesh together. You love it and the validation also feels great. What is your relationship to what drives you? And have you had to let things go that you realized you were doing maybe for the reasons that were not going to fulfill you?
Yeah, the biggest thing is the loss of control that's inherent in an industry like the entertainment industry. I still
Right.
really struggle with that
Yeah.
because it doesn't follow logic. It's not a meritocracy. The best thing you ever do might get the least amount of attention, and the
Mhm.
worst thing you ever do might be the thing that sets you up for financial success. And
Right.
not a lot of rhyme or reason to it. We'd like to think that talent rises to the top. But unfortunately, some of the most talented people that I went to school with, or that I got to work with growing up as a younger artist, that didn't end up being the case necessarily. There were countless other factors at play, as far as luck and privilege and right place, right time, and sometimes wrong place, wrong time.
Right.
I wish that there was a more satisfying methodology to predict who's going to have financial success, um,
Right.
and then being able to separate financial success from self-worth is something that I think everybody struggles with.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm resonating with this very much. And there is just no like step by step process of, okay, you get this degree and then you go do this and you do your 2 year internship and now you're financially successful in this, creative space. I'm curious to know what your creative relationship and partnership is with John. Some couples create together, some keep it very separate, their work and creative life. How have you guys navigated that together and kind of figured out your roles and, who does what with certain projects?
Yeah, it really came together fairly naturally because we're already really good counterpoints to one another.
Yeah.
I'm a a tangled mess of anxiety and ambition, and John's even keeled and a calming presence, who happens to also be really fucking good at a lot of fucking things.
Yeah.
And when you're making an independent project and sort of learning the ropes as you go, you don't actually know what is going to be required of you until it's required of you. So it's an ongoing exercise in problem solving. That to me is what independent, especially guerrilla independent filmmaking is. You have to say there are going to be countless problems, and we as a collective, as a team, are going to keep our wits about us, and we're going to solve them together. Because smooth sailing is very expensive, and sometimes
what a quote! I love that.
A yacht, I'm on a dinghy, I'm on a rowboat, and there's a storm coming. What the fuck do we do? There's a tiger in the back. What's going on?
Wading through the water with wooden spoons or whatever else I can find. I have to know because, okay, between producing projects for, others, making your own stuff, I mean, working out because you're in incredible shape, media interviews, so many things, right? Like, do you have time for breaks and rest, or are you at a point where you are working 7 days a week right now to like get your art into the world? What's going on with your schedule?
Art is the break. That is the vacation. My friend Bria Grant said that to me at one point, because she was my first friend that like hit with success in Los Angeles. It was me, Bria, and Constance Wu in an acting class together, kind of like fighting through it at the same time. And then, she was on Heroes as a series regular and like really broke through in this significant way. And then watching how many times she had to break through and keep breaking through was a big education for me. And now we're on similar trajectories too, where she's really focused on writing and directing, and sometimes pulls me in to be in her movies, like her movie with David Arquette, 12-Hour Shift, that went to Tribeca and was out on Hulu now. But mostly we're both focused on the creative side of things, not so much the performance side of things. But talking about acting, and I think it's true of writing, directing, and anything in the arts, she said it's essentially like standing in a field and hoping you get struck by lightning multiple times.
Wow.
And that stuck with me because I was like, yeah, it's not, you're not done when you have a break. That's
Right.
actually your next opportunity to, position yourself with your umbrella above your head and hope you get struck by lightning again.
Oh my gosh, that is an incredible analogy. And yeah, it's like instead of waiting around, not only for you to get the perfect role, but for yourself, but to have that like be created by somebody and then audition and then get it. What if you just created it and made it yourself? I'm always a fan of that, taking action and taking control over your projects and your creative career. I talk with a lot of my creative friends about how they feel when they're not working on something, when they have a true break. And some of them have said that they get very depressed, and some really enjoy having a break and really need those chunks of free time. How do you feel when you're not actively working on something?
Incredibly depressed. I think
Really? Yeah.
that having something to work towards and to strive for fuels my dopamine, my oxytocin, like
Yeah.
everything that you need in order to feel joy. To me, it's cause and effect in terms of like getting to engage not just with my creativity, but with the creativity of others and having that energy exchange. That's the lifeblood of it to me. That's why I think I will always, no matter what, fight to stay in in a creative headspace and a creative community. There's no other feeling like it, because it is love. It's falling in love with your friend's creativity and falling in love with a performance, falling in love with a performer. Like I mentioned, all the folks that we got to bring on from Eastsiders to Unconventional, but we also get to bring in Willem, for example, and Stephen Guarino, and John, my husband, also acts in the show. So being able to keep engaging with those performers, if anything, like I would have liked to have brought the whole cast into it, and who knows, maybe eventually we will. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to work with the people that give generously of their creativity to me, I want to be as generous in return and always think of them. But as far as like the gaps and the breaks, a new sort of roller coaster has emerged for me over the last like 5 years, which is the sort of grieving process over projects that are dead in the water.
Oh,
Because
yes.
you have to spend so many
Yeah.
plates, and you just do have to accept that most of them are going to break. That's very painful, especially if you throw, your whole self into it. Like my first project that I ever sold was a legal procedural to CBS that I wrote for Lisa Kudrow and Dan Bukatinsky's production company, and
Oh,
I just
wow.
poured my guts into this. It was like a family drama,
Yeah.
legal procedural set in Mississippi. And it was a charmed development process. Everybody seemed to really love it, right up until the point where they decided they weren't going to do it.
Ah,
Oh, fuck. Okay. How
yeah.
do I get over that? And then just as I was starting to get practiced getting over that kind of grief, in part by doing projects like Unconventional, where I wanted to do it independently and push it forward out of like sheer will. Even those kinds of projects have a danger of just sort of like ceasing to exist. That's more like tending a fire than spinning a plate, where you just have to keep feeding it and hope that it doesn't go out in the storm. And the storms hit a lot. Had an indie feature completely financed last year, that the main financier just literally ghosted on all the producers right as we started casting.
Oh, yeah.
I had an indie feature I can't talk too much about that I was directing that was just a disastrous creative experience, and really is kind of warned me off a lot of indie directing for hire sort of gigs. And even with Unconventional, this project was imperiled so many times. We had a Zone 1 COVID case when we were first shooting in 2020, and you had to have a 14-day quarantine for the cast and
Wow.
crew, which was extremely expensive, to say nothing of taking down and remounting a production. And a
Yeah.
14-day break turned into almost a year, and we almost didn't come back. And then at every point through post-production, we were about $200,000 short of what we needed
Wow.
because of this COVID shutdown and all of the other costs that came into play. Because we were set to start shooting. Like I was on a scouting trip the week that COVID hit. So we were really planning on going right into production, and that didn't end up happening. Ended up being a 4-year process, which is not that unusual in terms of a turnaround for an independent film, but it's not the turnaround that I was used to working with on Eastsiders, where I was completely and totally in control. We crowdfunded every season, and then in the third and fourth season had some pre-sale money from Netflix. So we
Mhm.
always knew how much we were working with and what we could do and accomplish with it. And I would write the scripts again to available resources and available budget, um,
Right.
and then execute it. And it would generally be a year-long process. I would shoot it, and we would be in post for about 6 months to a year, and then it would come out. And I was really hoping that was going to be the case with this indie show too. But every stage of it ended up taking much longer than expected. And I'm so grateful that the production companies stuck it out, and the financiers stuck it out, and we have this release at the end of it, and that it's finally getting out there into the world. Because I'm so proud of it, and I'm so proud of this cast, and just blown away by their talent, as well as our guest writers and directors. Because unlike on Eastsiders, I was really able to have a full writers' room and a full slate of guest directors helping to create the show. Because there were 9 half-hour episodes, so it's kind of a
Wow.
season half of what I would usually do with Eastsiders as well.
I appreciate you sharing all of that because a lot of people just see like the shiny outcomes of things and they don't get to hear so much about all of the obstacles and the things that didn't happen or didn't make it for whatever reason. And you definitely like lose your naivete in this industry pretty freaking quick, right? Like that first huge thing, like opens up your world and be like, okay, this is how shit really works. And what am I going to do about it? Am I going to keep going? Am I going to make my own things? So have these experiences shaped how you create? Like after that first, like your like the legal procedural show that you made, when that did not happen, did that change how you made things going forward, whether it was for yourself or other people, knowing that stuff like that can happen and is likely to happen?
I don't really know what the lesson is.
Yeah.
Is to make something as good as it can be, you do have to give of yourself freely. So I had similar situations in the last few years with a movie that I was commissioned to write for HBO Max, a movie that I wrote for Netflix, both of which had incredible acclaimed directors attached to them, and both
Wow.
of which died very strange, unceremonious deaths.
Mm.
If the HBO with the merger becoming Max, we went through 4 sets of executives, and it's still not technically dead, but I haven't heard anything about it in a year.
Yeah.
And then with Netflix, it was a movie for the kids and family division, and just as I turned in my last draft, they shuttered the kids and family division and ended the director's overall deal. So it's kind of like, but how do you do that? How do you get it to that point without caring the most and fighting passionately for it and giving of yourself to it? I don't really know, to be honest. I think you still kind of have to burn yourself up on the pyre. But I think moving forward, I am going to try my best to, remember these experiences
Yeah.
and allow for some grace in terms of beating myself up about whether or not something gets made or not, because I was attached with two much fancier directors than I am. So if it happened to them, it certainly
Mhm.
can happen to me. And the more you compare notes with people, the more sort of like near misses and kind of heartbreaking losses you find out that people have actually had. From actors testing for a life-changing role to, even worse, filming a life-changing role and then having it just never come out. That's a
Yeah.
new possibility in this our year of the Lord 2025, with fealty to, the shareholders over audiences and creatives. I'm
Right.
so glad that Acme versus Coyote, it sounds like, might actually come out. But that's the perfect example of a movie that, by all accounts, every test screening, everyone who talks about it that was involved in it or has seen it, was a huge achievement. And some shady accountant in some dark back room of a studio just crunched some numbers and said, well, you'll make more money if you just throw it away. And so they
Ooh.
threw it away.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Unfortunately, that's the reality of the way that this business is currently structured. And we're seeing that also, by the way, across industries. It's not a unique affliction for the entertainment industry. Look at what's happened with Joanne Fabrics and even Red Lobster, for example. Not that I'm a big fan of Red Lobster, but I do think it's objectively a societal failing that a venture capital firm can come buy up a business and then run up debt and drive it into the ground as a business strategy. Uh,
Mhm.
I think we do need to have a reckoning with that at some point, because it's not serving anybody but a very, very small group of very wealthy people.
Right. It seems like the business side and the integrity of the art are constantly at odds. You hear about projects being purchased just to kill them so they don't get made. They don't want the competition, right? Like all of these things.
Happened to me and a very close friend of mine, and we just got the project's rights back, and we're taking another crack at it But we did get caught and killed on a project.
Ugh. So knowing that you really can't count on much in this industry, but you love it, it's part of your activism, you're obviously incredible at it. What has helped you the most through the years ensure that you can continue to make your art, but also pay your bills and also like raise funding? What has actually helped you make it possible and sustainable for you?
Taking a little bit of a sort of note from the honesty of the name of your podcast.
Yes.
um, I don't think that I think most people who tell you that there's a simple answer are trying to sell you something.
Mhm.
I've
Yeah.
been throwing myself recently into more content creation for my Patreon, which has been a real kind of buoy and support. I want to give back more to the people that have backed me in that way.
Mm.
So, we talked a little bit about it. I'm recording a companion podcast, interviewing folks
Yeah.
from Conventional, and maybe that could even be a springboard into something else. Just talking about the unconventional paths that you have to take in the arts or really in anybody's life or career or relationships. What I hope that people take away is actually maybe a little bit cheesy, but I'm okay with being a little bit cheesy if deployed in moderation, which is that you do get to choose how you live your life. And you don't have to go down a conventional road. You can chart your own course in life, in your work, in your relationships. Because increasingly, all of the roads that we were told were safe to go down have proven themselves to be hazardous or non-existent. My character in the show is in the ninth year of his PhD program in English literature, and with Kathy Griffin as his ball-busting PhD advisor. And just kind of have this sort of push and pull of like, well, why am I even doing this? Because this used to be a feeder to a job that doesn't exist anymore.
Mm.
Anybody in the humanities in academia right now, I think, is having the same life crisis and has been having the same life crisis since when I was getting my master's degree in 2013. That road is closed. You are going to have to figure out what else you can do with that skill set, with that
Yeah.
degree, and it's not logical. It's not as though there's like, oh well, I can't be a professor, which is the thing that I've been training to do. So I'll just go and tick off the next box. You have to really think outside of the box,
Yeah.
and that used to be true. That's always been true of artists, and in a way, I'm almost grateful for the preparation that living such a freewheeling and uncertain life has given me for the current moment. But I think increasingly it's true of people in marketing or tech,
Right.
things that, by all accounts, 10 years ago seemed like a really, really safe bet to become a coder or to go work at Google or Meta, or Twitter. You know, those jobs are also disappearing, and we're only scratching the surface of what AI is about to do. We're all going to have to figure out what's next.
Absolutely. I always thought, like, between, me and my husband, Cam, that, oh, my job feels so unstable because I've been a creative for, well over a decade. And he works in finance, but his company is about to have a major merger. You just really don't know. So you might as well do the thing that you feel called to do. I know that every project is obviously different and like, the COVID regulations and all these things that you can't predict. But what are the patterns in your creative process from conception to launching something and, all the things in between? Anything that you can share with that?
Yeah, I'm really in a current state of reassessing my own relationship to a creative process, uh,
Mm.
because starting to kind of make my living as a writer really shifted my approach to things in a way that I don't think has actually been the most conducive to creating the best work. Um,
Oh.
Selling a project and creating a world are similar but different skill sets,
Sure,
right?
sure,
Like
yeah.
to sell a project, you're usually going on some sort of fact-finding mission with an executive or talking about IP, figuring out what they want, and then crafting a, 20 to 30-minute pitch, 10 pages, single space max, hopefully, of what that project could be, and essentially engaging in like the outline and brainstorming stage of things, and then bringing a bunch of cooks into the kitchen and then selling it and then getting to write it. And I think a lot of people in specifically Los Angeles approach all art through that sort of how can I sell it mindset
Yeah.
versus what am I trying to say and how am I trying to express myself. So I think back on my process when I was writing plays that never got produced, or when I started writing Eastsiders without really an agenda or an idea of what would come of it. I just knew that I was turning 26 and was fed up with so many projects that I was a part of not getting finished or not getting made as an actor in Los Angeles. And I was like, well, I'm just going to make something with my friends. And so I just sat down and it came out of me and we made it. And then subsequent seasons all kind of came from that first spark of what should we do? What do we want to do? What story do we want to tell instead of what story do I think other people want me to tell?
Right.
And Unconventional was born out of that place as well. I wrote the first 3 scripts, without much of an agenda. I just knew I wanted to tackle something, and I'd been circling some themes that I felt like were a strong spiritual successor to Eastsiders. And I knew that I wanted to create some new characters and relationships to explore. And so I just sat down and I wrote it. The process of, to me, it's really the difference between opening a Word document, or for me, it's like taking out a legal pad and just starting with dialogue. And having the characters just really start speaking to me. That's how I always wrote plays, and that's how I always write independent stuff. And when I'm privileged and lucky enough to get hired to write a script, that is how I start writing a script as well. So the challenge for me in this present moment is to pick up the legal pad and the pen and just really start expressing, versus opening the Word document and, creating a tight 30-minute presentation about why somebody should pay me.
Oh gosh, I love that. I love just starting with the characters talking to you. Oh, I had another question about your process. Where did it go? Oh shit.
Well, I
It's
want to know
really good about
what's your process right now? That's what I want.
Oh my gosh, my process, I mean, right, you know what a big part of what I am going through right now is coming to terms with the fact that I just like being at home writing and podcasting. And I have been in this place for many years where I have like tried to push myself to do other things. And I keep coming to this place of why can't I just allow myself to do the thing that I enjoy? So right now that's writing books, and I'm writing proposals for my next book deal and doing this podcast and doing other projects as they come up. But I come from a performer background, and the shift was kind of tough because the performer part of me, like a lot of that felt exciting, and you get a certain level of attention and validation in certain ways from that you don't get when you're more behind the scenes. And so I think part of me misses that and doesn't know how to manufacture that with who I truly am and want to be, as somebody who's just a huge homebody, like as somebody who really just likes being here, kind of doing things, I guess more quietly in a way. And I feel bad about that sometimes. I don't know if you ever struggle with anything, similar or, opposite or whatever, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I struggle with that too. I relate to that a lot, especially moving out to Joshua Tree. Go weeks without seeing another person, and that time is great.
Yeah.
And I have found that, like, just from a professional side of things, like a tight hour-long Zoom is scratches an itch for me in terms of like getting to know somebody and connecting socially. And
Yeah.
I don't need a party full of people very often to scratch that itch. I'm more of
Yeah.
a homebody than I think I knew. I've
Interesting.
also leaned into
Yeah.
that. quite a bit in terms
Oh,
of
interesting. Okay, I remember what I wanted to ask you. I'm sure you're not short on ideas of things that you want to bring to life. I would imagine you get a lot of ideas for, TV, film, whatever it might be. How do you filter things out to know this is the thing I actually want to put my energy into and bring to life versus these things can wait? And my second part of that question is, have you ever been able to bring aspects of past projects that maybe didn't go somewhere into your present work, whether it was like an attribute of a character or something that you didn't want to like let die?
Oh, constantly. I'm
Yeah.
constantly salvaging and rescuing things that I loved from previous ideas, particularly in pitches. It's if you
Yeah.
know something works, just because you didn't get to make it doesn't mean that you shouldn't pitch again. Uh,
Right.
there's certain things that I think I'm just going to continue pitching until I get to make them, like
Yeah.
gay prodigal son story set in Mississippi. I've got like 10 different versions of that I'm working on. And I'm working on one right now that I'm really excited about. And it's a project that on a pitch stage has gotten some interest, but seems like it would be better for me to actually write as an hour-long pilot than to actually try to kind of keep pushing the boulder up the hill. And again, like here we have like those two not opposite, complementary motivators. Like
Right.
you have the motivation of like, how do you figure out which project to devote your time to? Well, you meet with an executive and they like one.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep. That gets
that's
moved to
one
the top of the
way.
list real quick.
And then when I'm writing, it really more is like what's coming out of me the easiest.
Yeah.
Like when I sit down, is it like pulling teeth, or am I excited to inhabit that headspace, and do my hands start moving on their own?
Yes, well said. Okay, I have to know about this move to Joshua Tree because the fact that you guys like picked up, left LA and like built a homestead or something, so many people talk about wanting that, talk about doing that, but you guys actually fucking did it. So, how did this happen? How did it come to be? What was the turning point? Anything that you can share about that?
But we've always loved Joshua Tree and Palm Springs. We got married in Joshua Tree in the park at Keys View,
Oh,
and
nice.
sort of make regular, at least once a year, usually more, pilgrimages to the park. Just because there's such an energy shift when you get up to the high desert. It's something like, I'm not too much of a hippie woo-woo person, except for the fact that I recognize it when
Yeah.
I encounter it, both in terms of the energy of people. You can get a vibe off of somebody who hasn't said a fucking word to you. I can get a vibe off of somebody from across a room with their back turned to me. So there's something
Right.
about the energy fields that people put out. And I think the same is true of places. I think there are places that you're just magnetically drawn to. And Joshua Tree is one of those places for me and for my husband. And then at the tail end of the quarantines, something just sort of snapped in us, because we were sharing a 1-bedroom apartment the entire time in Silver Lake, where my husband would be on work Zoom calls in the living room, and I would be sitting up in bed writing scripts like a convalescent Victorian woman,
Yes.
like just I've taken to my bed, and there was
Been there,
definitely
yes.
something had to give. So we said, wide open spaces, let's go. And we found a homestead on 5 acres in the middle of nowhere off a dirt road. And somebody had already come in and made it livable. And we came in and made it gay.
Incredible. Wow. That's a big dream I have, is to like kind of live more off grid, but still be on grid because you have Wi-Fi and all that stuff, but to just be more removed. Is your homestead, is that at like a filming location now? Have you used it to film things? Was that part of the plan or dream of this place, or did that kind of evolve organically once you moved there?
So it's art imitating life, imitating art, because we started filming Unconventional and then moved out to the desert in our break,
Oh
that
my
we had for our
gosh.
shutdown,
Wow.
and ended up using it as one of our main filming locations. not only as the house of the two queer women in the show, Margot and Eliza's house, because they're renovating a homestead in the middle of nowhere, and it's putting a strain on their relationship. I was able to pull from a lot in terms of tile frustrations and things of that nature, but also just trying to build this dream in the desert. And trying to make a home. Those are big themes, I think, in the show. And something I was living while exploring in a narrative.
It's just so cool that, even making a personal change like that can inspire how you're creating or what you're creating. Some people wait for like a certain idea to come to them to make something, but sometimes, making the changes in your life that you want to make will inspire the thing that you want to create as well. And is there another house that you guys are working on with this same kind of idea? Did I see another property or
Yeah, so I'm there right now. This is
Okay.
our second property that we've kind of made gay in Joshua Tree. It's in Yucca Valley on the way to Joshua Tree, about
Okay.
30 minutes from Palm Springs, and it's kind of the vision for it is the Palm Springs experience in the high desert. Um,
Okay.
so it's a 1970 pool house with a lot of like Brady Bunch charm, a rock fireplace, and a pool in the backyard with a view of the mountains and Joshua trees. So
Oh
it's a
my
little
gosh,
bit of
so
both
cool.
worlds. And they're both, active Airbnbs now, but we, live out here as well. So that's been a really incredible shift to be able to, be both in Los Angeles and in Joshua Tree and sort of satisfy both of those needs at the same time.
So when you come back to LA, do you guys rent something out here? Do you have a place out here? What are the logistics of managing properties?
Yeah, we held on to our one-bedroom apartment in Silver Lake.
Okay.
Uh, we've been there for 13 years, and they will pry it from my cold, dead hands. Um, so our landlord allowed us to sublet it for
Oh,
the 3 years essentially that we were knee deep in renovations and film production and all of that. We've been able to kind of return to it and have it be it's still our home as well. It's the apartment where we shot Eastsiders, and we have so much history there. And so being able to hold on to that has been really, really cool. And we know it won't be forever. It'll probably feel like closing a really significant chapter in our life if and when we ever move on from it.
mm,
When we move on from it, it will happen someday.
yeah,
Uh, but it's been a real gift to be able to do this and to also be able to share these houses with others. That's something that I've really loved being able to do, give people incredible experiences and, have families come together, have couples go on their honeymoon. Like you do get
yeah,
a little bit of information about the people that are coming through the door. And while there are a handful of assholes, by and large, it's been really cool to get to interact with the people that we've gotten to interact with.
yeah.
I do all the property management. I talk to every single guest. We had property managers, third-party property managers for a while, and it never really worked out for a number of reasons, different reasons for the different people that we had to part ways with. Some were stealing, some were bad at
Ah,
it.
yeah.
Lots of perils out here. That we are in the wild, wild west up here in Joshua Tree a little bit. You got to be a little vigilant.
You are like the embodiment of a multi-hyphenate. I would love to know what you would tell people. Let's say somebody's tuning in and they want to film something, whether a documentary or a series or, short film, feature, whatever it might be. They are starting from scratch, no experience, no connections, no financing. What advice would you give them to help them bring an idea of theirs to life, no matter what the outcome is?
I'd say the biggest piece of advice I can give is to avoid perfection paralysis. This idea that everything has to be perfectly in place and exactly what you envision. You're going to find it as you make it.
Right.
There's no kind of worse cliche person to run into at a party in Los Angeles than the person who can't stop talking about their idea that they've not ever sat down to write. much less make. That's the biggest thing. Don't be that person. Don't be the person who worries so much over the details that you stop yourself from taking the next step.
Right. Great advice. And what about the person tuning in who maybe they are making the thing. Maybe they're finished with it, but they don't know how to raise funds for certain parts of it, or yeah, any tips that you've learned over the years that could help somebody with maybe financing or fundraising?
Yeah, so I have a lot of background in crowdfunding. We crowdfunded every season of Eastsiders, raised over $500,000. It was really
Wow.
from the fans. And that started out very like, uh, you know, going down the list and writing to every single person that I had ever engaged with in any way, shape, or form, saying, "Hey, I'm doing this new thing. Would you please check it out and donate or even just share it?" And I think that that's changed a lot since 2013. I think that there was like a real oversaturation of it, and now like we've moved into GoFundMe's being more for medical bills. Unfortunately, that's a sad state of our society, but that's kind of become true. But I do think that there is still something about that willingness to stick your neck out and potentially embarrass yourself. As long as you're not coming at people with entitlements or expectations, then I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to let go of any kind of shame, because it doesn't serve you. Because if a person is judging you for trying to make a project, they were judging you already. No, I never expected anybody to donate. Never affected my opinion of anybody or impacted my relationship with anybody if they didn't donate. Certain people I did expect some form of a response, and that's something that I kind of like carried with me. And then as far as like getting financing in larger amounts, there's a lot of kind of luck to that from what I've experienced. I wish I could say it's been a perfectly logical sort of process that I can replicate. But it hasn't. Every single project that I've gotten financed or haven't gotten financed has had its own journey in terms of getting it exposed to the people that would be open to doing that sort of thing. It's also not something that I've admittedly spent as much time cultivating in my own career. There are definitely independent film producers who are incredible at creating a Rolodex of people that might be interested in investing in films and exposing them to projects and engaging with them in a long-term relationship building kind of way. I'm not good at
Yeah.
that. I'm much better at kind of putting stuff out there and seeing what it attracts.
Yeah, such great tips. The times I've gotten to spend with you, you have such a warm, vibrant energy about you, and you bring so much positivity to the spaces that you're in. And I'm curious to know if you were like that even as a kid, or do you feel like these experiences that you've had impacted your empathy and openness when you're around others? Like, where does that come from for you?
I'm a deeply negative person. I'm very happy to hear that that's the energy that I
I'm
put
a
off
actor.
because it's
You know?
deliberate. It's by choice.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I do believe that the energy that you exude, it's like practicing gratitude, where if you
Yeah.
do approach people with empathy, kindness, understanding, warmth, then that energy comes back to you and is reciprocated. It's also self-generated, right? Like if you stop and say, I love this meal that I'm eating. I love this. This is so fucking good. You'll enjoy it more.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
think just trying to like as a practice, this is something that has been, 30 plus years of practice of not bringing negative energy into positive experiences whenever I can avoid it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I won't throw down. if the vibes are bad, I got some bad vibes I can bring to the table. But
Oh my gosh. This is
I'm
my
from
favorite
Mississippi as
response.
well, so it's also like I'm gonna be nice and
Uh,
neighborly up until the point where you inform me we are not neighbors. Up until then, we are friends until proven otherwise.
I appreciate the honesty of that answer so much. As an activist, I mean, you obviously are very vocal about so many things. And I also know that you are in animal advocacy as well. So, at what point did that become part of like your, personal or professional growth?
I tried to stop eating meat in the first grade, tried again in the
Wow.
third grade, and it stuck in fifth grade when
In
I was
Mississippi.
yes. Um, and was
Wow.
the only vegetarian in my family. I had an aunt who was pescatarian, and that sort of like led me down my little Lisa Simpson sort of rabbit hole of saying how can
Wow.
I make this possible for myself as a kid. The deal my mom struck with me was that I could do it, but I had to cook all of my meals for myself. So I started cooking when I was 10. And it ended up being such an incredible gift because I would always be cooking meals with my mom. And it was a really special time that we got to spend time together doing.
Yeah.
And then I just sort of, I started with an instinct that then shaped into a worldview and a philosophy, and they are very much entwined with queerness and anti-racism and anti-misogyny and all of these things that are like kind of core to how I see the world, is that we shouldn't be putting people into categories and dismissing them and their skills and what they have to offer to the world or making assumptions about them.
Mm,
To me, like the same is true of how we approach animals. And the more you learn about it, the more you understand that what's happening in the world, not just the United States, but the world right now, is unprecedented. This is not something that we as a species have ever done up until the last 100 years. Factory farming, the billions of animals that are killed every fucking day,
yeah.
in horrific and unnecessary ways. This is not the food chain. This is
Right.
something new and horrible. And that's something that, evolved with me over the time, starting out as a vegetarian and then, moving into veganism and like really becoming more informed. Like veganism really came about for me in the last 5 years out of being more educated about the sources of animal byproducts that I
Right.
initially I was capable of fooling myself into thinking that things, because they had a certain kind of label on them, were sourced ethically or were not the result of tremendous suffering. I often wonder if, like, kind of realizing that I was queer growing up in Mississippi is also kind of what helped me realize that it didn't fit with my own kind of personal worldview. Queerness can be a real gift. One of the reasons why my husband and I say that being gay was the best thing that ever happened to us, because once you start to question what society tells you is the way that you're supposed to be or you have to be, you start to wonder, what else might I have been lied to about? Um,
Yeah.
and I think that animal exploitation and factory farming is one great, big, colossal, horrific lie that people have been fed.
Are you ever surprised with people who can't make that connection, who are from a marginalized group of some kind, that are not making the same connection that you did?
I've got friends and family members across the spectrum, and I think it's important to meet people in conversation with where they are. I think it's
Right.
really admirable when somebody takes a step towards more ethical consumption, saying, "Hey, I'm going to actually research where this food comes from and how it makes its way into my grocery store, and then make an informed decision about what I consume." That's a
Right.
great first step. That's incredible. Um, you train from birth. I mean, we don't even call meat by the name of the animal that it comes from half the time,
Yeah.
uh, because there is something that if you start to say, like, "Yeah, I'll have cow," you start thinking you don't want to associate, your burger with a living creature. It's literally been just transmogrified into something as far removed from it as possible. And, people have different levels of empathy towards different animals. And we're still using the arguments of a society where eating meat was perhaps a survival necessity.
Right.
People are still kind of approaching it with that same mindset and those same justifications, even though that couldn't be further from the truth. You can have any kind of life, any kind of body you want, and not consume animals. It's literally unnecessary. And I understand that most people have not accepted that. Then you do have to start having questions about, well, if I can do it for the same price, and if I can do it with the same result, then why would I kill someone in order to, have lunch?
Right. People kind of see it as a necessary evil. As a kid, making those decisions of I'm going to stop eating meat. How did you even realize you wanted to do that when that's not what you were surrounded by? And what was the moment that you decided you were going to do that?
Well, initially it was kind of a guttural reaction to eating meat.
Okay.
I have vivid kind of visceral memories of like biting down on like a globule of fat in a burger and spitting it out when I was a little kid, and then just being like, I don't want that. I don't want any of or needing to have it burnt so that I could dissociate, further from what it was. But then what really stuck for me was fifth grade. We dissected fetal pigs in my fifth grade science class, which is really early to be
Oh
doing.
my God. Yeah.
And also just profoundly unnecessary. And, I
Not even
kind
effective.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we know so much more about that now than, we did
Right.
in a science room in Mississippi when I was 10. But
Right.
but at the same time, like, what was gained from that?
Yeah.
And I had that kind of conscious thought at 10 where I was like, what are we learning? I mean, what I kind of learned from just like observation is that everybody was like really theatrical about how gross it was, and then went and ate meat at lunch.
Mm,
And I was like, wait, is it gross or isn't it? I
mm.
find it gross, and you say you find it gross, and you're all screaming and freaking out, and then you go and you have the same thing on your plate. So in a weird sense, that was kind of a definitive educational moment for me where I was like, no, it is gross. I don't want to eat it, and I won't ever again. And I didn't.
Gosh, I love the determination of little you. That's incredible. Where can people find you, all of your series, projects, anything that you want to direct people to?
Yeah, you can find me on the internet at Kit Williamson on pretty much everything. I'm on patreon.com/Kit Williamson. And you can find my shows, Eastsiders, on Netflix, and Unconventional on the LGBTQ streaming app Reverie, which you can download for free on any smart TV or device. So laptops, phones, television, you name it. You can watch it for free right now. And I hope you do.
Thanks for hanging out with Self-Helpless. Feel free to share this with someone who could use it, and you can binge related conversations linked in the show notes. Ad-free episodes are now available on Patreon, and because I'm practically allergic to social media, the best way to get notified about new episodes is to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or join the email list at selfhelplesspodcast.com, where you will also find some free goodies like a watch and read list and the quote buffet. All right, love you big time, and thank you so much.